I'm Hannah.
And I'm James.
And we are the hosts of the 2 Cents podcast and a tiny channel on social media with 3 million followers called Salary Transparency. We ask strangers what they do for a living and how much they make to empower workers.
Yeah, and promote paid transparency and inform people of careers that they can explore.
We started the page after finding out that I was underpaid, so it's a very personal mission to us. And truly, this work is what turns our world, makes our world go round, and we just love doing this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, couldn't imagine doing anything else now. I feel as though our work has reached so many different people and helps change so many different lives. So
we started this podcast 2 Cents because we love talking about money on our channel, and we decided to dive deeper into these conversations. We have an exciting podcast planned for you all today, where we're going to talk a little bit about lifestyle creep, luxury items that might be a scam, but we think are things that we need once we get raises. And then we're going to have a story. Am I the a-hole? But we're going to go with jerk today. And we're going to go through a story that really demonstrates how this plays out in real time in couples. But this isn't just a relationship or a conversation only for couples. Talking about money can be done with your loved ones. It can be with roommates. It can be with friends and family. So all of these are really applicable conversations to any conversation you want to have with a loved one. So let's get into it.
Yeah. And although this is a podcast, we'd love for you guys to interact as well.
Yeah.
So we do have a mic that will be going around. So just raise your hand whenever you're ready to give some input.
And if we didn't say it for the podcast for people listening live, we are recording live today from the Capital One Cafe in New York City in Union Square. Let's hear you guys in the background. Yay! So people listening next week know this really happened.
Yeah, they'll be like, oh, I don't think that's people. They use the soundtrack.
Yeah, people showed up to our event. They wouldn't believe us. But look, it happened. We're so thrilled. This episode is brought to you by the Capital One Cafe, our go-to place for community and caffeination.
And if you'd like to redeem a free handcrafted beverage of your own, make sure that you redeem it in the link below.
It's on us. Thanks again to Capital One Cafe. Now back to the episode. All right, let's go ahead. Let's kick right into it.
Yeah, you want to start it off?
Yeah, so we have an icebreaker to kick off, and I have a trivia followed by the icebreaker. So it is, are engagement or wedding rings a scam? Trivia question for you all to kick us off. And first person to answer this gets a high five. Okay. All right. How much does the average engagement ring cost? Any ideas?
Any guesses?
17,000. Okay. 10,000.
10,000.
3,000. 5K. All right. According to the Knot 2024 Jewelry and Engagement Study, the average cost of an engagement ring nationwide is about $5,200. Yeah? Yes.
You get a high five.
I love it. This number has fallen in recent years. In 2021, it was 6,000. So that 17,000 was probably about 10 years ago with reverse inflation. They are very expensive. And it's something that a lot of couples fall into the trap of. And that's what we're going to debate. Yeah. Is it a trap? Is it a scam?
Well, it was also that they convinced us, too, that diamonds are rare. You know, it's this earth or this rare earth mineral that you can only get after, you know, high heat, high pressure. And they got to go through all of this work to be able to mine diamonds, you know. So that's why it's so expensive, or so that's what we were told.
Yeah. And another thing that we want to point out is a diamond is not a smart investment. It loses about 50% of its value the second you purchase it. It's not a house. It doesn't appreciate. It's not a high yield savings account that is money saved that can grow with interest over time. It's not, you know, paying off debt to get rid of anything that's holding you back from reaching your financial goals. It's actually putting you further in the hole.
Yeah, I look at it as more like a car. You know, as soon as you buy a car and drive that off the lot, you've just lost money in that car.
Now, on the flip, I always love a good debate. And my dad is the king of, you know, the devil's advocate. Right. So he taught me a lot about that. And so I did do some research on the other side of people who think that it is not a scam. And it's interesting. I just wanted to share. So some people who think that it's not a scam believe so because it's not a forced or expected purchase. I mean, culturally, it might be for some, but no one's forcing your hand. That's a good pun. No one's forcing you to buy this. It's all about what we have kind of convinced ourselves needs to happen. So is it a scam if it's not forced? The other part is, rings can symbolize a lot to people. With cultural differences, a ring can mean commitment, it can mean loyalty, it can mean love. And that's important to people, especially when you're going into matrimony and you're coupling up. You want to have that commitment. So if it means a lot to you, that's another side just to consider. And then, of course, there are also other options. There's lab-grown diamonds. There's moissanite on my hand. You don't have to get a diamond. So are engagement rings a scam if the purchase decision is in the person's hands? I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yeah, did we change anybody's mind about diamonds? Was there anybody here that was like, it's definitely not a scam?
As the person who bought his own engagement ring.
Love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No diamonds, but later. I think that marriage is a financial agreement. You can fight me on that if you want.
Yeah, it is.
If I would rather, you could buy somebody a house, you could buy somebody a car. $5,000 is not like that much in the grand scheme of things, and it sort of shows your partner that you are making an investment in the relationship. You're showing them that you can save, hopefully. You're showing them that, they are worth you giving them this really expensive gifts and maybe not losing it, even though I lost mine like immediately.
Right. So did he?
Yeah.
He's lost his
So
too.
I think I don't think it's a scam. I think you have to show the person that you are entering a financial relationship with that you're like, I got this, don't worry.
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting perspective, and it's important to see both sides of the coin. 2 cents.
Yeah.
The name of the podcast. I love that. So I thought that was a really great icebreaker. Let's go right into the main topic. Basically, we want to talk about, is keeping up with the Joneses keeping us broke? I have another fun piece of trivia here. I love a good trivia. So question to all of you. What percentage of luxury item consumers are lower and middle class? 50%?
At least 50,
40?
70,
70? 60? According to Bain and Jones, between 70 to 75%.
You are
Yep,
2
you're
for 2
on
today.
point today.
Go buy a lottery ticket.
Right? But isn't that insane that nearly 3/4 of luxury item purchasers are lower to middle class? Not technically the people who should be buying luxury versus trying to, in my opinion, reach other financial goals, but to each his own. Has anybody here purchased a luxury item when they were still living paycheck to paycheck or didn't feel like they were making enough? I have. I'll be honest. I regret it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same way for me as well. They kind of say that billionaires, the people with all the money, are the ones who look like they have the least amount of money. And that's for a reason, But us being lower middle class, we tend to want to look the part rather than actually live the part. So buying these expensive items is our way to do that.
Yeah. And what I think is fascinating about this, if you've seen our interviews where we ask people what they do and how much they make, some of the higher income individuals that we've interviewed are not wearing flashy clothes. You would never guess that they are the higher earners. And it's so interesting to me to see this play out in the comments, our social commentary, like in real time, because people will say clout, cap, they're lying. But it's really hard to wrap your mind around, I guess, for them, that a really rich or higher income individual doesn't wear luxury designer brands or logos. But some of the people that we've interviewed who are wearing those are on the lower side. So it's just really interesting to me how that plays out. Let's talk about some ways that keeping up with the Joneses is keeping us broke, though. So number one, lifestyle inflation is so real, especially when you get a raise. The second you start making more money, now you have more money to spend. That's
Right.
exciting, right? We can all get really out of hand about that, and the spending gets away from us.
Yeah, we call that lifestyle creep by all means. You make an extra $200, so you're like, oh, well, now let me get this thing that I've been putting off so long because now I can afford it. Or so you think that you can afford it.
The other one is social media. Social media really exacerbates this problem. Who here follows, some content creators that they're like, I wish I had that life?
The ones that go on trips all the
do.
time, on boats and expensive cars, stuff like that.
Yeah, the nice bags.
Yeah.
It's real. It's very real. The other one is society really equates success with luxury. Luxury items can signal that you're doing well. It shows you have money. If you have that engagement ring, like we talked about, it shows you can provide. Having things can also, in some minds, translate, I'm doing well. But the opposite side is you spent money on a depreciating asset, potentially, and that money's gone.
Yeah. And then another way is that debt is normalized now. Taking out loans is a part of life. If you want that nice car, you understand that you have to take out a bigger loan for that. So now you're looking at, can I afford my loan versus can I afford this car?
There's a huge difference between being able to afford something and being able to finance it. Clear difference there. It's important to ask yourself that.
I think that
we're seeing a conversation play out
that
here.
conversation happened already.
Do you mind sharing? Do you want to share with us?
I feel like being able to afford something is like, yeah, I can get that $100 thing. But when you finance it, you think about, okay, what is the principal plus the cost of the interest? How does this fit in my budget? If you're trying to work from within like a 30% savings, 30% luxury, and 30% living.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the difference for me, where it's like, can you afford it? Yes. But can you afford to finance it with everything included?
Right. Exactly. If you went to the car lot and you want to buy a Bentley and it costs, I don't know, how much do Bentleys cost?
We'll just say
$60,000?
We'll just say 110.
$110,000. You look at the monthly payment, you're like, I can afford $600, $700 a month. But could you afford the $110,000 outright? Because that's what you bought. That's what you're going home with. And after the interest, it's going to be a heck of a lot more. It's going to be more like 130, 140. Can you afford that? That's what we need to ask ourselves.
And then maintenance costs as well. And these are the other things that are tacked onto that people usually don't consider because they go, well, I can finance it. Yeah, you can finance that, but you can't finance your insurance. You can't finance the tire rotation that you need to get every 3 months now, the oil changes that you need to get, and all the things that's associated with that purchase.
Yeah, you're the mechanic. You should have took the lead on that. You know all these things.
Just a little.
But really quick, I just want to iterate. We're not shaming anybody. We're not here to make you feel guilty. I've bought luxury items before. Do I have thoughts about it now? Yeah, I would have done things differently. But that's why we want to have this conversation, because if we don't talk about it, it can feel really lonely to be in that situation. And also, it's not about judging. It's about just thinking about what are the other options that you can consider? Why is it valuable to consider those other options? And if you don't have the conversation, it's really easy to have tunnel vision and think, I need this right now. This will make a huge difference to my life. But having this conversation, we're going to go through how to fight lifestyle inflation without feeling miserable and give y'all some tactics on how to make sure that you're putting your money towards your goals that you want to reach and fighting luxury creep.
Yeah, and with that, after we give you guys our recommendations, we'd love to hear what you guys have for recommendations as well.
Yeah. So we're going to kick off with ours. Number 1, give every raise a job. And what we mean by that is when you get a raise, you should look at your budget and think, where am I going to put this extra money? I'm going to put 10% more towards our rent. I'm going to put 20% more towards the car payment. And I'm going to put 30% more towards our savings, maybe a high yield savings account or your emergency savings. They should be combined, ideally. But it's important to think ahead and think, okay, when I get this raise, this is how I'm going to split it. Because if you give it a raise, it's easier to just set it and forget it. And then you don't have to worry about spending it, right? If you can't see it, you can't spend it. So give it a raise or give it a job.
Give it a job, yeah. And that kind of also plays into this other one, which is to automate your good decisions. So paying rent or putting money into your savings, things like that. If you can put those on like an auto pay system, then you don't even have to take a look at it. So then you don't have to worry about, making a mistake and spending that money, because a lot of us do that. If that money just sits in your account, you go, well, I have $1,000. I can afford it. But you didn't take into account that now that's part of your high yield savings that you're spending, or money that was already for paying off debt or something like that,
Yeah, set it and forget it. I like that saying.
Yeah, set it and forget it.
The other one is to avoid upgrading everything at once. Set one treat that you really want. Don't put the extra raise or the extra money that you have on a bunch of different things you want. Choose one meaningful thing that you want to splurge out on. If it's meaningful, hopefully it's meaningful. So it'll mean more at the end of the day to you, but it's really easy to get carried away. So make sure that you set it to one meaningful thing. And then the next raise you get, go towards your other goal and splurge towards that. It'll have you something to look forward to for the next raise instead of going all out on the first one.
Yeah, because I know I'm very bad about that.
Yeah.
I work on motorcycles. I love motorcycles. And I'll be like, oh, let me just upgrade this one part. And next thing I know, I'm buying new handlebars. And now I have a new motorcycle. Just that quick. So yeah, definitely set it so that you have targeted goals, All right, cool. I'll do this with this money. And then next month, now I'll do the upgrade for the other portion.
Oh, you've got the 24, 48-hour rule.
Oh, yeah. So this is a rule that I use myself. I've been using this for forever. But use like a 24 to 48-hour rule before making big purchases. This way it gives you that opportunity to actually think about it and figure out, is this a purchase that I just want to make in a spur of the moment type of thing? Or is this actually something that I want long term? Because if you buy it in the spur of the moment, you may get home and be like, well, I just spent that money and I didn't need to. You give it 24 hours, 48 hours, you'll look and you'll be like, oh, well, I didn't need that. I just wanted it because it was available then, or because I saw a good deal for it.
And my last one is to anchor to your long-term goals. I really like this because I'm a manifester. I like to write down my goals. I like to set them in a place where I can see them and constantly be reminded. It helps me just be aware of what I'm looking for. It's what am I looking forward to? And it reminds me to do good practices every single day that get me there in baby steps. So think about what your long-term goals are. I recommend writing them somewhere that's visible in your house. Maybe if you have like a community calendar in the kitchen, that's where I write our goals. Yep. Or on your phone, you can set it as the background of your phone, or you can do a reminder on your phone to send you the note that you have of your long-term goals, maybe once a week. But be aware of them. Don't forget about them. Anchor to them. It'll help you reach those goals a lot faster.
Yeah. And the last tip is to unfollow the Joneses. That's a lot easier said than done because nowadays we spend a lot of our time on social media. But honestly, if you just take the time to unfollow those people that are so tempting to you, you see them all constantly going on trips or buying luxurious items, that makes you want to do the same. So if you just take a step back, maybe even cleanse yourself of social media for a little bit, wouldn't hurt. But yeah, that'll give you that opportunity to start living more within means.
Yeah, do a sage cleanse and move on to the other channel. So what are some of your ways that you fight lifestyle creep, or any questions that you have or struggles with lifestyle creep and advice that you would like us to share? Or maybe somebody in the audience will have something to share too.
Track every single purchase so I can come up with an average that I spend over the course of a few months and then adjust every 6 months based on what I spent in the 6 months prior.
That's
really
one.
good. I like that one.
That's excellent.
I'm in marketing, so.
You get it. Yep.
I probably have a bad advice.
Okay.
Because I really like to shop.
Guilty.
And there was a period of time I'm just so obsessed with rings. And I like those expensive ones.
Oh.
Then what I do is actually just to look. Not 24 hours, not 48 hours. It's a month or 2 months. And you keep looking at new things, more and more things. Then you start to realize what you like at the beginning all of a sudden become less attractive because you find there are so many things so alike everywhere else. Yep. Then it's nothing. You start to feel you are not putting so much into it. Then you start to have like a better ideas for what you want. And all of a sudden you feel, oh, spending so much money, like on a single ring, which you can only just on your finger.
Right.
And people are not going to see it. So obviously they not even notice it. All of a sudden you just feel, oh, I probably don't want this anymore.
Right.
So not a good advice, but
yeah. No, I love
good
that
advice.
though, because there have been times where I bought a nice bag or I bought new shoes and no one says anything. And it immediately is like, oh gosh, I just spent so much money on something that didn't get the attention that I was hoping for. And it is kind of sad. It makes me think, oh, okay, I maybe should have rethought that decision.
Yeah, we had another hand.
Hot take. Girl math is more dangerous than you think it is.
100%.
Oh yeah, I bought something at Ulta, but then I had to return it for $30. Now I have $30. So if I get something else that equals $40, I only spent $10.
Yeah.
I think that's really dangerous as a current and future victim of this.
Yes.
But
Literally same story of my life. We always joke about girl math. He's
Yeah.
like, "Are you going to buy that because of girl math?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
of
because
course."
she's an avid returner.
Yes.
I hate returning things. She's like, I'll buy up the store and then return it in 3 days.
Okay, I'm not that bad, but like I have, done a little bit of damage.
Yeah, I say advice wise is have separate bank accounts for separate purposes.
Love
so
that.
like
Love
my
that.
friends are always like, why do you have like 4 different bank accounts? And I'm like, because one is like weekly spending, one is like big bills,
Yeah.
one is high yield savings, and then one is like my like anyways fund, which is my friend calls it because it's money I'd spend anyways. So that's like your vacation fund, like your higher like kind of dollar fund for
Yeah.
aspirational things you want to spend money on. So and that's in addition to like retirement funds and stuff like that.
I love
I
that.
like that.
That's a
in any
really
ways
good tip.
fun.
Definitely have different bank accounts. It helps you just have like ownership of where that money is. And I also like having a label. I don't know. For me, I'm just like, okay, no, this is savings money. I can't touch it because it's in the savings pot, but I can touch the money that's in the play money, like the fun money that I can mess with. I don't know. Maybe it's my OCD. Maybe.
Now I'm kind of the same. It's just that I use it for credit cards. So
Any other really good tips? Yeah.
Interest-free credit cards for folks that actually have. I know the whole credit thing, sometimes it's tough because folks are either rebuilding or don't have the privilege of like, because I have great credit given the fact that I was an authorized user. So
Love it.
props
Okay.
to my mom that she
Yeah.
did that at
Yeah.
18.
That's a good
but
tip.
she did not do that for my younger sister and brother because I don't think she trusts them. like she saw like
you're the favorite.
yeah, that's why I keep saying. But like, so because of her, now I'm 35. I've been had excellent credit. But what I do with the interest-free credit cards is, since there's a system that, let's say if you want to rent a bedroom, they do a credit check and whatnot. That my way is to maintain that strength is fine. I'll get credit cards, but I refuse to pay you any interest.
Love it.
So,
Same.
so then when I make these interest-free purchases, I make sure that actually I have that amount in my bank account, but I'm gonna divide it up. So if you're giving me for 15 months, I'll give it to you in 15 months. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give it to you right away.
Right away.
So that's how for folks who are able to, I know that's a privilege in itself, but it has worked out, and that's how, in a way, I say F you to the credit system.
Yeah. 100%. You got to play the game, right? If they're going to play the game, we can play it too. It works both ways. All right. I think this is a good time for us to transition to Am I the Jerk for censorship purposes? So I'm going to read this story. It's a true story from Reddit. So it's true, but it is from Reddit. So take that with a grain of salt. But this is interesting. All right. Am I the jerk for wanting my significant other to pay more for rent and other things, even though I make so much more? My significant other and I are dating and have been living together for less than a year. Our current rent is about $2,000 a month, and various utilities run about $700 a month. I make about 4 times my significant other, so I pay all of the rent while they pay the utilities. We also shopped for our furniture together and paid equal amounts. We didn't go all out and stayed within a reasonable budget. For example, our couch cost $500 and my significant other easily paid $250 and I paid $250. We're happy with the situation and there's been no complaints. I've been offered a new job in a new state and we agreed to move for my job since it'll be a great stepping stone for my career and I'll be making much more, about 6 times more than my significant other. Also, my significant other works at a job that is easily available in a new state. Furthermore, my significant other is excited to move because the new state has much more opportunities and things for us to do for fun. The problem is that my significant other has been looking at places that cost between $8,000 to $10,000 a month, while I'm only comfortable with paying up to $4,000 a month. My significant other argues that I have to look the part of my new position and the more expensive places are in better parts of the city with less crime. While that is a valid argument, my contention is that we don't have to live in the city and I'm willing to commute. In addition, my significant other has been looking at furniture and appliances that are far beyond what we currently have. We're not bringing anything but clothes and some items. For example, I'm perfectly happy with a $500 couch, but they're looking at one that costs $3,000. We went back and forth until I had enough and said that I'm only paying $4,000 a month And we're buying reasonable furniture and other household stuff. If they want to live in a luxury building or have designer stuff, they'll have to pay the difference. My significant other was hurt by this and accused me of being financially abusive and rubbing my better earnings in their face. They've gone to their friends and family, and literally everyone is against me. I thought I was right, but now that I'm the only one who thinks that I'm right, I'm not so sure. What are any initial thoughts hearing this? Yep.
I think it also depends on the gender too, because like wealth gaps in relationships matter a lot, especially when it comes to how you approach spending money. It kind of seems like maybe the person earning less saw this as an opportunity to upgrade their lifestyle in a way that they wouldn't have access to on their own. So maybe they see their partner's earnings as kind of their earnings. So Lord knows, like, the conversations happening that aren't disclosed in that Reddit, that's their thought process. They could be thinking of getting married, and maybe they are now thinking of the money a different way. So I think there's always like context missing in Reddit. So you gotta like, you know.
How serious are they?
Yes, and I know the thread you're talking about. So no, and it's also just like there's nothing wrong with wanting a better lifestyle, but you have to be aligned in how much more you increase, because going from like a $2,000 a month like payment to like 5 times that puts a lot of financial stress on someone in a new job where you haven't even started yet.
Right.
You don't even know if like they'll rescind the offer by the time you relocate. You don't know if they're offering relocation assistance. So like with those dollar amounts like not being disclosed, there's a lot of context missing. But I do think sometimes people have a scarcity mindset when it comes to money as well. And they're afraid to upgrade their lifestyle because they're afraid of losing the money that they earn. So I think it's actually more a conversation of like, what is the poster's relationship with money that also makes them afraid to upgrade in a significant way? Because if you're going to make double or triple what you're currently making, you probably could pay the $8,000 a month and not really struggle, especially if it's a safety investment. But are you comfortable with that? So it's really just like comfort gauge and being really transparent with your partner about your limits and your boundaries, which it sounds like they set. But again, we don't know the context missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. That was
I think you
awesome.
brought up a lot of great points in that one.
That was really good.
Yeah, that was great. I hope you didn't like look at my face when you were reading that. I was like,
I felt a little energy on the side.
So I think a few things. We don't know how old they are. It's important to know how old somebody is. If this is a couple that's 50 years old and they're talking about like them finally making the money that they deserve, then they have less time to save for what the future might look like.
Good point.
I tell people this all the time, that it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep. So if you're going to increase your income by 60%, but you're going to increase your expenses by 60%, then you're just working harder to get the same exact amount.
Right.
The other thing is that they said that the significant other didn't think it was a problem. Their difference in wages, it's always a problem.
Yeah.
It is, for lots of different reasons. My wife and I, when we first started dating, were probably like 4 times difference. And one of my goals was to make sure that she got her money because money is great.
Yeah. And we want to have more, of course.
Yeah. And so, you know, when you have that big of a gap, there's going to be resentment. It doesn't matter if you talk about it or don't talk about it. But as people earn more, there's just more opportunity to do more with that money. But it's also empowering to have equal pay, you know, have high income at equal pay. It's a wonderful feeling. And so there's a lot that person has to unpack, because sure, you can spend $8,000 on, I don't know where they're moving. They're going to spend $8,000 on an apartment.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, New York.
But like, what are your goals? You know, what are your collective goals? Are they to buy a house? Are they to retire early? Because if you can afford an $8,000 apartment, you can probably afford to retire relatively early. So would you rather just live in a nice place or have to work for 15 years less? I know what my choice is. So it doesn't seem like they've discussed what their goals are. And obviously a lot of goals cost money. So
it costs money to make money.
I have a lot of feelings.
This one is there's a lot to unpack there. Any other thoughts before we kick into some of our main? Yeah, we got one back there.
Yeah, I actually feel it's not gender related. Because I feel like no matter you are a woman or a man, what important is to be independent.
Correct.
Even though you become a couple together, you need to if you want to spend more, then you might want to put in a little bit more efforts into figuring out how to make more to sustain your life. Because a relationship, even though ideally you want it to last forever, but life happens. Sometimes for any kind of reason, they might separate your way, then you need to continue sustaining your life. If you're relying on like a higher income partner to supply you the things you want, which is not specific you need and you can't afford, it's not going to last long. And as the gentleman over there mentioning about the resentment, it definitely happens. But then it comes back again for what do you think about you are in the relationship? If you are reaching a moment, you can see two of you guys as one. You have like a common goal to reach forward to. And it will be worth a conversation to see where is the mutual ground that both of you guys can step onto. For example, where do you guys want to live? What is the longer term goal? So I think that matters to it. So to answer his or her question, and I don't think that person is a jerk in this situation.
We need more context, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely more
we can't
context.
judge yet. Yeah, definitely. Did you have another question? Yeah, here we go. We got one more up front.
For me, I'm like, where's the equity? Because so I'm in a I'm gonna make 4 years with my girlfriend now in
Nice.
September. But the
Happy
thing
Pride.
is, oh, thank you. And this is the thing is, I feel like I'm about equity, but also that's because I identify as a feminist. So does she. And right now she's unemployed. So I know that we're relying on my sole income, but I also am aware that things had to change financially if I'm gonna be providing for both of us to go on dates. That's not because she doesn't want to. So here I feel like I don't see no equity whatsoever from both sides because one acknowledges that they're going to make 6 times more with this new opportunity. But then here's the partner over here is thinking, we made it. And yet, but you're not the one doing the work.
Right.
And so what are you bringing to the table? If it's something like, let's say it was agreed upon that you're going to be the stay-at-home partner and maybe care for your caregiver or something, that changes things. So I'm like, I see between these two that there's no equity whatsoever, no conversation has happened. And, sometimes things happen because I know eventually Sheikah will out earn me or earn the same how I'm going to. But then there's going to be times that life does happen, but you have to have that foundation about what is equitable to you in that particular time. And similar to what you said is like, what are the shared goals? And I agree with you. Marriage is a financial arrangement, because if you don't have two folks coming in saying this is what we aspire to and this is what we want, you're gonna have these kind of problems where one seems like they feel so entitled to your earnings, and then all of a sudden now you told your friends, you told your family, now the poster feels so alienated and it's thinking to themselves, am I really the jerk? And when in reality, what it could be is like, no, I'm not, but it doesn't sound like equity has been either talked about, or maybe it has, but that doesn't hold the same value. So I think I would like to see it from an equity lens. If they had that, if not, then we'll see how it goes with them.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes with them. Fingers crossed.
And then we have one more in the back.
Mine was brief. It just seems like more people should enroll in couples therapy. It could really work with financial insecurities.
It's so funny you say that, because I just started a show called Couples Therapy on Showtime or Paramount. It's on Prime, so one of those. And there's like really interesting conversations that they have. And I'm like, they need to dig into the money side of this, because there's a lot to unpack. They need to go to couples therapy. I agree.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I meant, so exactly reiterating everything that you guys said.
Yep.
I feel the same way, because the biggest thing that we kind of drilled down to was they didn't really have the discussion prior to, as a couple, it's kind of this understanding that you guys will be transparent with one another. And like you said, it's an investment into your life with one another. So making more money doesn't necessarily mean that we both made it. It means that now we both need to have this conversation to figure out where we're heading from here.
I think a really important conversation that they skipped out on, it seems, would be, what would you do with extra money? Like, if I was on a date with someone and I'm scoping them out,
Me.
you know, yeah, hopefully not anytime soon. But we've talked about money a lot, and those were conversations that we had. You know, what is luxury to you? Luxury can be completely different to everybody.
Yeah. I mean, just this last episode that we recorded, we had the discussion of what is qualified as a big purchase for you. For me, it's $500.
Mine's about $3. I consider that a big purchase. But what is the big purchase, right? A vacation can be $5,000, but you know, if you have a big family, that might be what you expect to what you expect to pay. But if you want to buy a bag for $5,000, it's different, right? So it's all about perspective.
Right.
And you have to have those conversations with your partner to make sure you may not be aligned, but can you navigate the steps forward without conflict? Or is there going to be a big disagreement? Because that might mean you are not aligned and you might have problems down the road. And like I always say, it's more expensive to hire an employee after letting them go, and it's very expensive to get divorced after getting married.
Right.
So don't make the mistake in the beginning. And if you do, you know, it happens to a lot of people. Divorce is what, 50% is caused by
50%.
money?
Yeah.
So it's important to have these conversations because clearly money is causing conflict.
But also, it's important to have these conversations with not only just your significant other, but your family, you know, your friends, because the original poster's boyfriend, I'm assuming that it was a boyfriend. That's just my
You assume?
my assumptions. But like they spoke with the family about it and friends about it and kind of alienated the poster, you know? So what is their relationship like with money to the point to where they can talk about other people's money with their family?
But that also brought up a good point of when you're speaking with your friends, say you go out to dinner and you're going to go get drinks and you expect drinks is like, you know, just happy hour, you know, nothing expensive. But you meet up with your friend who chose the restaurant and it's a luxury, like 5-star
$50
dinner,
drinks.
$50 drinks. How do you navigate that moving forward? It's important.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Or New York. So it's not just a conversation to have with your partner or your loved one. It can also be with your friends and your family so that you're, you know, not having these uncomfortable situations where you're like, who's going to pick up the bill? Because I did not agree to $50 drinks. But that is the main topic that we have for you all today, talking about lifestyle creep and how inflation creeps up into our budgets when we make a little bit of extra money and the importance of having these conversations with loved ones. I think this is a really great time now for us to turn it all over to you. And if you have any questions for us or concerns, you want to have a discussion with this group about something that's on your mind, now is the time or place.
Yeah.
You have the floor.
The floor is open to any questions. We're social media, so we can also answer questions about that. Anything.
You often ask people like what field they're in and what they do. I really think about different jobs in pay scale, not in industry, right? So if you make $20 an hour, and you can be in a lot of different industries. So what have you seen as the like the opinions of people that make, you know, let's say under $20 an hour? Because obviously, I think in New York it's like $21.75 is the minimum wage.
Something like that. Yeah.
What do you find about the conversations of people that make under $20 an hour compared to people that maybe make like that describe their salary in like annual salary versus like hourly folks?
You mean like in the comments, how people feel about them or how they feel about themselves?
How they feel about themselves.
That's a good question. It's interesting because one of the things that we hear when we're out on the street, when I ask people, hey, can I interview you? We hear more often than not lately, I can't do it. I don't make enough. Like, I don't want to share. And I think that's really interesting because I always flip it back to them and I'm like, well, that's why you should share. Like, if you feel like you don't make enough,
Yeah, if you're undercompensated.
this is your platform to share your story and explain it. But generally what I see is a lot of shame. And it's a bummer to me. It makes me sad because what somebody makes says absolutely nothing about who they are, how smart they are, how intelligent they are, their value as human beings, or what they bring to society, what their friends and family think about them. But we inherently tie so much of our value to our compensation. And I really see that play out, especially when I interview people who make under $25 an hour. And it's hard to talk to them and see that they blame themselves. But there's nobody to blame. Everybody is undercompensated. That's my hot take. I think nobody is making what they deserve, especially with inflation constantly rising, cost of living going up through the roof, and our wages are stagnated. We have a right to be upset, but we shouldn't blame ourselves. We need to fight the system, fight the power. And I'll do a quick little shout out if you need help doing that. That's what our channel is all about. We're all about providing free resources to workers to help them learn and earn more. So we have a market research guide, we have a salary negotiation guide, we have a salary database, and a transparent job board. All of those are free. We've built this infrastructure because we want to put the power back in workers' hands. So if you feel like you are not making what you deserve, hopefully one of our resources can help you. But that's also why we have this platform. We brought a lot of attention to a flight attendant who was working at American Airlines, who was making, I believe, $35,000 a year.
25 to 35.
With 10 years of experience. And she pointed out that at American Airlines, she didn't call them out by name, but I will this time. She pointed out that it's not about, at American Airlines, it's not about tenure. They don't pay based on tenure. You would expect somebody with more years of experience would make more money. They don't see it that way. If you start from ground zero your first year at American Airlines, it doesn't matter how much experience you have, that you've been doing it 10, 20 years. You start at the bottom, lowest pay grade, no matter how long you've been doing it. And that's a problem. That's a really crappy policy, and that needs to be changed. We can't bring awareness to that unless we talk about it. Yeah, got a question right there.
First, I want to thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Full transparency, I came here today. I'm actually from Orlando, and you partnered with my nonprofit for Latina Equal Pay Day last year.
I did.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and I think a lot about the comments during our live stream that were really angry.
Yes.
Like when you pointed out that there is a gender and race aspect to
that.
compensation, and how like, you know, openly being like, the data actually supports this wage gap. So like you guys are getting mad, but there's numbers that support that,
Right.
you know, Latinas are the second like lowest paid demographic in the United States. So like, what is some of the pushback you faced as you embark in your advocacy journey for pay transparency? And like, how are you overcoming that pushback? Because as a founder of a nonprofit, like, people get angry when I tell them like you should ask for more money, and then they get like offended when I say that, or employers get offended when I'm like, you're not like raising salaries properly. Like I won't accept corporate sponsors from people who don't pay their workers well.
I love
And
it.
when I hold them accountable for that, they like don't want to engage at all past that. So like, how do you deal with like some of the more like angry reactions to your work, and like what is some advice you can give to others doing work in that vein?
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I do remember that live stream very clearly. I remember at the end feeling really sad because I felt like our conversation and bringing me into it had dimmed the impact, because we had that conversation and the comments were so upset, and I felt a little bit of blame for that. So I just transparently, I did feel bad. But at the end of the day, you have to have thick skin. You're gonna get those comments. You're gonna get people who say the wage gap isn't real, like it's been disproven. That's not true. There's so much data out there that proves that there are pay gaps that affect so many marginalized communities and workers, and the data supports it. So it is a little bit of thick skin and just knowing to trust the numbers. I'm a former data analyst, so numbers are my language, and I believe strongly in them. The numbers don't lie. It's, what does Katie Heron say in Mean Girls? Like, she loves math because it's universal in every language. Like, everybody can understand it. And that applies here too. The numbers don't lie. And so I think it's important to trust your research, be knowledgeable about your research. That for me has given me confidence. I don't care if people tell me the wage gap doesn't exist. I know it does. I've done the research. You haven't. And you're confident to say that. I mean, some people are like that, but don't worry about them. Like, they don't matter. If they are upset because we say that, okay, earn less. I'll earn more. Like, honestly, you can leave those people behind. In this day and age, we all have access to this information. If they're not with it, they're never gonna be with it. So Don't worry about them. They're not the community that you want to help. There's so many other people out there to help. And then when it comes to corporate sponsors, sorry, I know I'm like talking.
Good, do your thing. She gets into her role.
This is what I do. This is what I do.
happen.
When it comes to working with companies and such that are upset if you don't want to work with them because they're not doing the right thing, F them. Honestly, they will be left behind. There's a lot happening right now where people are putting their money where it matters, and people are choosing not to spend their money in certain places. So it applies here too. If they don't want to work with you and you have a fantastic organization that represents a lot of Latina workers, a whole community, that's their loss, not yours. It's all about the perspective. Yeah, if they don't want to work with you, that's their loss. You know the numbers, you know the data. They know what they should be doing right. There's a reason they don't, because they think it helps their bottom line. But the joke's on them. If you don't pay your workers fairly, it's way more expensive to replace them when they leave, and they will leave, because the only way to respect your workers is to pay them fairly. That's how we feel respected at work. It's not about the kind emails. It's not about the lunch on Fridays. It's pay me what I deserve and what everybody else makes for the same role. That's showing respect. So if they're not with it, you don't want to work with them anyway.
What were some of the marketing expenses that you made early on at 2 cents that you felt like really helped you spearhead either 2 cents or Salary Transparent Street? It could be like big purchases that are $200, as you say, or larger investments that you're like, I'm so glad I invested in this and it really paid off long term.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good question.
Some of the initial purchases that we made for 2 cents itself, just the podcast, were the cameras. Those are big purchases though, because camera equipment is very expensive. As far as audio equipment went, those weren't as big of a purchase. We used the Rode Wireless Go 2s, which are probably about $100, something like that.
How much do the cameras cost?
I think about $700 a piece.
Yeah, so that was a big investment.
Yeah.
That is amazing for the quality.
Thank
Right?
you.
Are they Sony?
I appreciate
Yeah, they're
that.
Sony's.
Of course they're Sony.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, they're
I should have
Sony.
guessed, sorry.
And then
Sony
just
mirrorless.
yeah, then
Sony
just
we
like
love.
accessories for it. So like we got the cables for it so that we don't have to run battery packs, and then the tripods and stuff like that.
Another, in terms of, I guess it's marketing, but it's also operations. We had a studio when we first started the pod. So if you watch the first initial episodes, we were in like this
The
nice
first
little,
season.
the first season, we were in this nice little room, which was actually, we were looking for a studio. And we live in the Northern Virginia, DC metro area, so it's not big on content creators. It's up and coming, but we couldn't find anything that worked for us or was within our budget that we were looking for. And then we looked at WeWorks and stuff, and we were like, well, if we're filming a podcast, like we don't want, to be seen doing it and people being like, that's Hannah Williams. And it's
Right.
like, hi, like in the middle of the pod. I was like nervous about that. So we actually decided to get an apartment. We got an apartment downtown, and it cost us about $3,000 a month, which was actually about how much a studio was going to cost us to rent out, and so it equated
Yeah, it
about
equated.
right. But we learned that it's not about the location. Like it doesn't actually matter where you film the pod. We learned that pretty quickly. You could film a podcast anywhere. And so we actually started filming at the Capital One cafes. We would be traveling all the time, and we'd be like, we're here anyway.
Yeah.
Like, why don't we just record this while we're here? And thankfully, our partners at Capital One were okay with it. So thank you to you. But we learned that it doesn't matter the location. It matters what you have to say.
Exactly.
And you have to start. Don't spend a lot of money on all the little knickknacks that you think you need. Just start. Because once you get your wheels turning, once you start building an audience, everything comes together. All the pieces fall together. But you could end up spending a lot of money creating something that maybe you want to change down the road, or maybe doesn't feel right, or isn't exactly what you expected it to be. And that's an expensive investment.
Yeah, and like she said, try to start as cheap as possible. Don't buy every single piece of equipment that you think you might need, because you most likely won't need a lot of it. So try to start very minimal. Get maybe 1 or 2 cameras, a little bit of audio equipment, and then a little bit of external lighting, and then that should be enough for you to be able to kick it off the ground. And then as you figure out your flow, figure out your topics and stuff like that, then you'll figure out exactly what you need as far as camera wise and audio, and then as far as singing.
Yeah, and we had a friend design our logo, this cute little logo behind you, which we learned people think it's 2 O's, which makes sense, but it is supposed to be 1 O, so we might have to redesign.
Yeah. No, I like
Might
it
have
though.
to go back.
I like it though.
I like the look.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're like coins. We're like Abe Lincoln and stuff. But we might have to redesign and go back to our friend. But luckily, we didn't spend a ton of money on that. It was something like, we just need cover art. Let's give her an idea. And she came back with a really good idea or a design. But we did spend a good amount of money on an editor because that is just above my intellect, and I didn't want to be held back from doing something that we were really passionate about because I just lacked the skills.
Yeah.
So that's one of the most important lessons I've learned in entrepreneurship is hand off the things that you really don't want to do, that
Or
don't
can't
spark
do.
passion or can't do, because they're going to hold you back. Those actions, if you don't get them done that are important and you hate to do them, you're not going to move in the direction you want to go. You're not going to have that energy. And that was me. You know, we had all these ideas, but I was like, I can't do that. I don't know how. So find somebody who knows how to do it for you. And there's a ton of great editors out there that are cheap too to start out with.
I'm curious because you brought up the race, ethnicity, and gender aspect. If perhaps you might have thought about maybe focusing on another social identity, and one identity comes to mind because I identify as such as first generation. And the discrepancies, because I know there's another content creator. I know his first name is Colin. I forgot his. He's like Careers by Colin, and he really focuses on like first gen professionals. So I was just curious if perhaps you thought about maybe exploring. I know there's certain months that like focus on Latina women or how indigenous women are like, but or LGBTQIA community. So I was just wondering if that has crossed your mind or not.
Yeah, definitely. It has. It has, but then there's always like, I think about the comments and I think about what I'm inviting in. And sometimes I just think a more general conversation, like acknowledging the problem and talking about it, but then not, putting that hard label on it, because the internet is cruel and we've seen it all. One of the things that I pride myself on with our interviews that I think a lot of street interview channels don't do is protecting the people we interview. We're very intentional about that. We don't get people that we think are going to be ridiculed on the internet. If we see them, they can just walk on by. I'm not going to interview anybody because I know it'll go viral. It happens naturally. The people we interview go viral because of the stories they have to share. And so I try to focus on that instead of looking for people to put in like a group and to be potentially attacked on the internet. I more so think, let me just put them out there. Like, this person is a person of color and this is their story. And they don't need to be labeled as a person of color to be taken seriously. At least that's my perspective. But I do think it is important to be intentional about the work that needs to be done to help marginalized communities. So I think there are things we can do better there too. Okay, I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all for coming.
This is so fun. One last quick shout out. Thank you to Capital One Cafe for giving us this space to have this conversation. That's why we love working with them, because they're all about bringing finances into a conversation that we can have comfortably and in a really great space that's welcoming too. So thank you all for coming. If you want a Capital One Cafe beverage, there's a free link in our bio. And also, if you have a Capital One card or a Discover card, fun fact, you get 50% off all handcrafted beverages. So be sure to use one of your cards and you'll save more money than you do on Starbucks.